REWRITTEN! Epilogue! It had seemed to be a perfectly normal, boring day at the fry shop until he spotted Stephen coming. Petey thought that he'd seen a flash of pink in the corner of his eye, but he hadn't bothered to budge from his spot, thinking that it was just some shiny toy that a kid was playing with. He had his arms tucked close to him, knees curled tightly together, both his coat and a small heater at the back of his truck trying to help him warm up. This year's winter was stumbling onto them with its shoelaces tied together. A big snowstorm had dropped itself right in the beginning of August a few weeks ago, before letting up and returning to the usual brown-orange chilliness of autumn. Nobody had any idea why or how it managed to dump that much snow on them. It was like a real-life Christmas in July situation. Well, whatever it was, the false winter had passed and was now being replaced by a real winter, and Petey was cold and he didn't want to move if he didn't have to. But the pink glow got closer and closer, soon joined by petrified screams. "The monster! It's back! Help! Somebody call the police! Run!" That sure caught his attention. He looked over, almost instantly jumping out of his skin from what he saw. It was Stephen. Well, he didn't recognize it to be Stephen at first. He looked so different, but it couldn't possibly be anybody else. Petey hadn't seen the hybrid in months, and he looked to be in an even worse state than he'd imagined. He was confused and also a little scared of his sudden appearance. Stephen wasn't supposed to be in town. That was a rule that everyone had agreed on for the danger that he posed both to other people and himself. Not many human citizens had seen him in a while because of that, but the rumors that got out about him were filled with how he looked like some freaky half-lizard monster. At first it was just speculation from the injured citizens who had been healed by him, but apparently a little while ago, Stephen and one of his guardians, Amethyst, had walked all the way down the beach and into the forest. Nobody knew what they were doing, but a handful of people had spotted him and taken pictures, and their descriptions of him seemed to get even more terrifying every time they told the story. Petey could clearly see that those rumors weren't myths. Stephen had tall pink horns sprouting out of the top of his head, bat-like ears pinned on either sides of his face, tusks poking from his cheeks, fangs bristling in his jaw. Most of his skin was overtaken by dark, scab-colored scales, his hands and feet consumed completely until they were taloned paws, his back a forest of quills. It all looked painful, judging by his short, limping movements. Stephen's mutated, scaly features were even more frightening in person, so close. The parts of his skin that weren't scales were a blazing bright pink. It seemed like he was running away from something, not specifically aiming for the fry shop, coming from some direction deeper in town. He had a spooked flare to his eyes, several pedestrians shrieking from fear at the sight of him, scattering. Petey watched, unsure what to do, as Stephen slowed down a little, more from tiredness than safety, drifting left and right dizzily and gasping like he couldn't breathe, puffs of white clouds coming from each breath in the cold. A hand was clamped tightly over his stomach where Petey knew that strange alien gem was embedded. He'd been mild friends of Stephen whenever he was a kid, but he had apparently been destined for more exciting things than hanging out with Petey. Petey actually preferred it that way. From what he'd seen, all that pressure of saving the world had put Stephen in a bad place, leading to him having a serious case of PTSD and a mixture of other disorders. Petey had at first been jealous as he watched Stephen go off into space to fight with magic aliens, but now that he'd seen the consequences of all that stress, he was perfectly content with his normal life at the fry shop. He'd rather be safe than important. Petey watched Stephen stop suddenly, one unnatural clawed paw on the brick wall of a building, panting in and out faster and faster, shaking his head with his eyes darting all around at the terrified citizens, looking like he was about to faint. People were still screaming all around, even though he didn't seem to be doing anything except look terrified. Stephen drifted dazedly towards the bricks until his head touched them, and then began to slide down with a pained groan, curling up next to a bench with his paws hiding his face and shivering from the cold, still struggling to breathe. The worst of that wasn't over. It was just getting worse. Petey glanced around, looking to the people who had been outside for their reactions. Several of them had already sped off, probably thinking that something like the corruption incident would happen again. One was trying to drag their friend, who seemed to have fainted, away to safety. The people who had stayed out of freezing from fear were now backing away, pushing their children behind them. He saw many phones to ears, either 911 or animal control dialed on all of them. Nobody was going to help him. Whatever was happening, it wasn't good, and Petey's concern wouldn't let him just stare dumbly out the fry window anymore. So he hurried out the side door of the truck, abandoning his station at the window. Caution slowed his step as he remembered how dangerous this might be. Sure, it looked like he was just scared, but what if everyone else's fear was for a reason? What if he'd attacked somebody? Still, even if those things were true, Petey couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Stephen was a friend. Maybe he'd be able to calm him down? Making up his mind, he kept going, waving to the pink reptilian boy as he approached him carefully. "Hey, Stephen, are you okay?" he asked, hands up in front of him to show that they were empty. Stephen yelped and his head shot up, quills popping up on end like a startled porcupine, eyes barely focusing on him. He was pale and soaked with sweat, confusion warping his expression, not seeming to be able to properly form a sentence. He stammered breathlessly. I'm where's... I can't find them. Where am I?" he coughed out. "Help!" He really just looked scared, and all the other people's bad reactions seemed to be making it all worse. He had to get him away from here. Petey quickly reached out to him, aware of all the worried looks that he was getting, hearing a few gasps of anticipation. Well, if none of them were going to step up. "You're near the fry shop," Petey told him. "Fry shop?" Stephen repeated, before suddenly snapping his head back up towards him, reaching out to him with his unsettlingly long talons, but stopping before he touched him. His eyes were wild with panic as he stammered, "Petey, I have claws, where are my hands? I want my hands back, Petey, where are my hands?" Petey stared at him, not knowing what to do. He tried to calm him down, saying, Stephen, I didn't take your hands, just relax for a second, I think you're having a panic attack." Stephen blinked several times, shaking his head. No, not again." Here, come inside. You need to get out of the cold," Petey said, trying to guide him back to the side door of the fry shop. The building, not the truck. He didn't really know what was happening, but he did know that the freezing temperature wasn't helping him at all. Stephen looked as if he must have lost half his body weight in sweat, which obviously wasn't helping him retain any heat whatsoever. He could see him shivering violently, every strained breath chattering through his fangs and coming as white puffs in the chilled air. It was cold enough for frost to form on the windows, and for goodness sake he was only wearing what looked to be pajamas, the pants of them rolled up above his knees due to the crested spines on the backs of his calves. As he helped Stephen, trying not to touch the hideous scales that had devoured most of his body, he noticed that the hybrid was whispering rapidly to himself, only seeming halfway aware, something about no, don't, and please. Petey wondered if this was a good idea. He had no clue how far gone Stephen was, besides gossip. Though where are my hands bit didn't seem that promising. Some said that he lost his mind completely and that those crystal gems were keeping him locked up for his own good. Others said that he just had depression and that it had manifested as corruption. A few even guessed that the corruption came first, maybe from fusing with an uncorrupted gem, and that his mental problems came afterwards because of being corrupted. But even if Stephen was insane, Petey knew that he couldn't just leave his friend out there. Someone had to do something, and if Petey was the only one willing to do it, then so be it. Unlike his friend, he hadn't done a single heroic thing in his life, so helping the boy who saved the world would be the least that he could do in return. Petey ushered him through the side door, closing it behind them, the heater already trying to help warm them up. Stephen slumped down against the wall with a weak moan, struggling to draw breath, his paws still curled over his gem. He was glowing brighter than the flickering fluorescent lights on the ceiling, coating everything in a pink shade. He'd seen him here and there like that, like his skin was made of the sun, but he still didn't know exactly what it meant. Probably nothing good. Petey squeaked fearfully, So what do I do? Do I need to call an ambulance or something?" Stephen didn't respond at first, and Petey was worried if he could understand him at all, his concerns circling back around to exactly how crazy he was. But then Stephen shook his head quickly, grunting, "No, thank you, I just freaked out a little. Bad dream." It seemed to be far more than he was letting on. He rubbed his eyes, seeming a little more aware than he'd been a few minutes ago, shivering horribly and still breathing raggedly. "It's the middle of the day?" Petey began, puzzled. Stephen looked embarrassed. Sorry, I have trouble sleeping. I just try to do it whenever I can." Petey was glad that at least he looked to be calming down now, and Stephen seemed to be a lot more sane than people were saying that he was. Enough to hold a conversation, at least. He seemed more panicked and tired than crazy. It was actually kind of sad to watch. Before Petey could find out how to help, he heard disaster walk in behind him. There was an eager shout of, "Whoa! What's happening here?" Petey grumbled in annoyance, turning to see his big brother bashing into the room loudly. Ronaldo. Obsessed with the weird qualities of gems, eternally curious to a rotten extent, and annoyingly selfish whenever it came to his blog, Keep Beach City Weird, Ronaldo would do anything for internet drama. "I have to get this for my blog, hang on!" Big surprise, Ronaldo instantly pulled out his phone and started recording before they could protest, saying to the camera, "I'm capturing Steven Universe in my fry shop. His first close-up appearance in weeks. It appears something is happening with his gem, causing a bright pink glow." Petey hated the sparkling look in his brother's eyes. He knew how giddy he was to be able to record this. He practically threw Petey aside, shoving the camera close to Steven's panicked expression, asking him, "How are you feeling right now? Is the pink glow dangerous or radioactive? Do you think it's possible that you'll become corrupted again? Tell me the thoughts going through your head right now." Steven almost disintegrated under the pummeling questions, the panic returning even worse than it had been before. He shrank away from Ronaldo with a cry of fear, curling over onto the floor with his arms over his scaly face, still being strangled by whatever was happening to him. He was clearly in a lot of pain, but Ronaldo didn't seem to notice or care, and instead continued to push on with the flurried remarks. Petey was absolutely horrified of his brother's absurd behavior. Didn't he see how distressed Steven was already? He was making all of this worse. Petey tried to push the phone away from Steven, yelping, "Ronaldo, get that thing out of his face! You're making it worse!" Ronaldo huffed like Petey was the one who was being rude and said, "Hang on, I just want to get some footage. This won't take that long." Steven was a pitiful wreck on the floor, shaking uncontrollably, the pink glow harsh to look at. "Ronaldo, please! Forget the stupid footage! We have to help him!" Ronaldo gave him an offended look. He still didn't get it. Ronaldo said sarcastically, "Well, geez, sorry, I was just excited." "For a kid with PTSD to have a panic attack?" Petey finished for him. Ronaldo stopped suddenly, the realization shocked on his face. Petey pushed Ronaldo and the phone away, yelling, "You're acting like this is the best thing that ever happened to you! What is wrong with you?" Ronaldo flinched, but didn't say a thing. Petey knew that this talk had been building up for too long now. He sighed and said, "Look, you're my brother, Ronaldo. I love you, and I love how passionate you are, but this is absolutely not the time to interview Steven. Sometimes other things are more important than a view count or rare footage." Petey turned away from him, not wanting to hear Ronaldo's excuses. "If you're not gonna help, just leave us alone, okay?" He was giving Steven his attention now, asking quietly, "Hey, it's okay, the camera's gone, just what do I do? Do you need water, or should I go get help?" Steven didn't answer, still petrified with his head hidden in between his elbows in fetal position, like he was afraid of Ronaldo attacking him. His fast wheezed breaths were concerning. Then he could hear the click of his recording turning off, followed by his brother slowly and awkwardly backing out of the room into the back, closing the door. An apology would be nice, but at this point, Petey was just glad that he was out of the situation entirely. Steven only began to relax whenever he was gone, uncovering his tear-stained face and staring tiredly up at Petey, his mouth still agape but the gasping going down a little. He told Steven, I'm so sorry about Ronaldo. That was just awful of him to do that to you." Steven rubbed an arm across his face, saying sadly, I get it. I'm a freak of nature. He wouldn't be able to resist recording a meltdown." "Yeah, well, he should resist it anyway," Petey said. I hope I got through to him this time." At least the conversation change seemed to be helping. Maybe a shift in his attention was good. Petey tried to think of something else to say as he thought about what to do about the magic hybrid boy in his fry shop. "So, are you okay? Why'd you run all the way out here? Are you hurt, or..." Petey asked. Steven shook his head dizzily and said, "No, I don't think so. It was just... I don't know. I just woke up and ran out the glass door. I'm sorry. I don't really remember getting here. I just kept running." He suddenly jumped up in alarm and said, "Wait, I'm not supposed to be in town. I'm sorry." It's probably okay. You obviously didn't mean to come," Petey said, not sure if he was lying or not. Either way, that seemed to help the panic, so he decided to stick with that. But it would probably be best to get you out of here fast so nobody makes this a bigger deal than it needs to be. He remembered how many people had called the police. Stephen hadn't come from the direction of his house on the beach. He'd come from somewhere farther in town. So that meant that he'd been causing chaos for a long time before now. The sirens in the distance confirmed that. He looked up towards the window and asked more to himself, "How are we going to get you back home?" As if the world was answering him, the side door's handle rattled and then was thrown open by none other than Ronaldo. Petey thought at first that Ronaldo was coming back for a round two, but was confused whenever he saw that he was moving out of the way for somebody else, waving them inside and pointing, saying, "Here, he's in here." Several people began to enter the room. Stephen's dad and his 3 other caretakers, the Crystal Gems, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl if he remembered correctly. "Thank you." Garnet, the tallest and the clear leader, nodded to Ronaldo. "We'll take it from here. Sorry for the trouble." Petey just stared at his older brother in astonishment. He'd gone to get help. Petey stepped out of the way as Stephen's father dove towards him and wrapped the hybrid boy up in his arms as if the scales and spines didn't bother him at all, with a cry of, "Stephen! Oh, thank goodness you're okay!" Pearl, the thinner, bird-like gem, had a similar reaction, leaping over to him and checking him all over, asking in a flurry, "Are you hurt? What happened? Oh, stars, you're going to catch a cold!" "We were looking everywhere for you, man!" Amethyst yelled, her cross words being betrayed by the worried wetness to her eyes. "Why'd you run off like that?" "I'm sorry," Stephen stammered, still clinging to his dad desperately. It was just a nightmare." His expression suddenly twisted into one of guilt. "I'm sorry, I panicked again. I didn't mean to cause a mess. I'm not supposed to be in town. I thought it was better. I'm supposed to be past this already." No, his father held him close, reassuring him with a whisper, "No, it's all right. We're not mad. We're just glad you're okay." Petey watched this from a distance, trying to give the family some space. He glanced up at his bigger brother, who was still stuck at the door. His face was shaped into an emotion that he was sure he'd never seen from him. Shame. Ronaldo looked genuinely concerned for Stephen. He looked sorry. As Stephen's family began to help him up so they could go back home, Ronaldo stepped back for them, watching them exit the fry shop one by one. Right before Stephen was taken away, Ronaldo reached out, calling after him, "Wait!" Stephen paused, glancing back, his father's hand still around his shoulder to support him. Ronaldo stared after him, not seeming to know what to say. Finally, he stepped back, scratching the back of his neck shamefully and mumbling, I'm sorry about, you know." Stephen blinked at him with his exhausted eyes. He sighed and nodded. It's okay." And the reptilian hybrid boy limped away, his family helping him walk, the fry shop's door shutting to cut off his magic world from their normal one once more.